Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce ADoseOfBuckley, a guy that I've actually thought of covering before in the exact series that I happen to be covering today. In fact, some of you may remember that I used to give my top 10 worst hit songs each year, but stopped a couple years ago. And that's because I really wasn't feeling the videos anymore. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still songs I really hate, but a combination of writer's block on the subject, as well as the videos not living up to the viewership for this series, resulted in me stopping. Doesn't mean I wouldn't necessarily revive it in the future, though. And truthfully, I was at one point going to cover Todd in the Shadows doing this same thing last year, but really only one segment of it. But this year, there wasn't really a single segment where what Todd had to say didn't at least make sense to me, even if I didn't share his opinion on the subject. Buckley, on the other hand, guys kind of always rubbed me the wrong way, but this year, this might be the version of this list that I like the least. Now, there's a couple more things to note before we get in. There's going to be a little bit of skipping in this video that will not include a skip screen or a timestamp or anything like that, and that's because these are points where he's just playing the song. But the fact that he does isn't really relevant to what I have to say. So if you notice points where I cut something out but don't explain it, that's what's happened. I'm just cutting out him playing the song without providing any commentary while doing so. I'm also going to be skipping straight to his number 10 segment to start because, well, the way he introduces the video is fine. There's really nothing to cover here. He admits, though, that part of the reason he feels out of touch is because what he listens to isn't really where mainstream music comes from anymore, which is more than what some people do. All right, I think I got all the weird context bits out of the way. So let's get started.
Number 10, and the Sting Award for Where the Fuck Did That Accent Come From goes to Doja Cat, Woman. The first time I heard this song, I thought, what's a womma? Some new slang I don't know? I can't keep up with any of this shit anymore. But it turns out she's just putting on a weird patois that's as out of place as me axing you a question, no cap. Doja Cat, born in Los Angeles to a Jewish mom and a South African dad, is trying to sound like she's from the Caribbean when the closest island she was born near was Santa Cruz.
Okay, so this point alone is worth a whole commentary. Namely, because the Zulu accent when speaking English actually does sound pretty similar to a patois, and to really solidify that point, I'm playing some Zulu rap for this point, Enjoy Dangerous Killers. I mean, gosh, it's almost like Jamaica is between Africa and the US or something. And while it's true that she was born in a mostly white neighborhood, there's actually a lot of cultural influences to her upbringing, even if you assume her dad is lying about them having a good relationship. In addition, that song in particular is co-written by Jidenna, yet another person who could have guided her towards that accent, who was partially raised in Nigeria. And to really get across how much more what Doja's doing sounds Nigerian than Jamaican or even Zulu, I lied to you. I'm playing Omole now. So that makes two cultures that I can provide samples for that sound like Doja that aren't what you're getting onto her for using, and that both make sense, by the way. That's not saying that you have to like this, but calling it forced?
Cap. Besides the, let's call it, cultural appreciation, this is a pretty bizarre pop/rap song, being that it's 2022, and she's singing about being a submissive little baby factory, asking to let her be your woman, like it's some sort of privilege to be some dude's property.
That's because female empowerment is about being proud of who you are and not being forced into a mold. I mean, it can come across as weird, but, well, there's more to lyrical analysis to be had here, so just bear with me.
Kinda weird, but don't worry, she did find a way to also make it sexual.
She give 10 fold, come here, papa, plant your seed. She can grow right from her womb of family.
And then, like 2 seconds later,
You can reciprocate. I got delicious taste. You need a woman's touch in your place.
now maybe I'm the prude here, but I don't know how comfortable I am hearing people talk about putting a baby in their womb, and then immediately after that, talking about how great their pussy tastes.
Wait a minute. You didn't notice that those two parts of the lyrics are in different tenses? She's essentially speaking as two different people here. And in fact, she changes tense again midstream.
Just protect her and keep her safe. Baby, worship my hips and waist.
You see, because of how the sexual lines tend to be in the first person and the motherly lines have a tendency to be in the third person, there's a little bit of an exception to that, but bear with me here. I feel as though that's a deliberate choice with meaning. Either she's speaking from the point of view of two different women, which is weird in what some could see as an artsy way, but I could see you having a problem with it in terms of being a digestible pop song, or she's separating these two aspects of herself, thus doing metaphorically what I was describing rather than literally.
I guess that gives brand new meaning to eating for two, huh? Anyway, it's no coincidence that she's trying to sound like Rihanna. In the song, she literally says, "I could be the CEO, just look at Robin Fenty." That's Rihanna's real name.
You mean in the verse that proves you trying to say that the entire song is about her being submissive and breedable is complete and utter horseshit? Yeah, beyond just the line you're trying to use to roast her, the whole verse basically just plays out like it's a guest verse on God is a Woman by Ariana Grande. And that's the thing. You seem to be taking one pair of lines and saying that's the whole song. When in reality, the song has a lot of lines that indicate the ability to be a mother of the guy's children as part of what makes her powerful.
Doja, it's okay. We don't need a replacement for Riri. Truth be told, I really didn't miss her.
She was also on the soundtrack to Wakanda Forever. In 2022. 2 months before your video. Fucking Christ.
Doja, it's okay. We don't need a replacement for Riri. Truth be told, I really didn't miss her. Number 9, and the Shawn Mendes in a Wig Award for Worst Nice Girl Anthem goes to Dove Cameron, Boyfriend. So Dove Cameron's kind of this generation's Miley Cyrus, but like on a much smaller scale in every way. While Miley was a child star with the mega hit Hannah Montana, and then went on to have 8 top 10 hits as an adult, Dove was on some show where she played her own twin, and in some made-for-TV movie where she was Maleficent's daughter, and then went on to have this.
That's a pretty bad comparison, at the very least musically. First of all, Miley actually has 9 top 10 hits in the US, which means either you can't count, or you're not counting one of them intentionally because it's Hannah Montana related. Except 2 of her top 10s are from Hannah Montana projects, with See You Again being from Meet Miley Cyrus, aka Hannah Montana 2, and The Climb was also from Hannah Montana the movie. Which brings me to the first major issue with all of this. Miley Cyrus was being promoted as a music artist alongside the show she was on from the very outset. And sure, Dove Cameron was singing a little bit in Liz and Maddie, but if we look at the time of release of their soundtrack albums versus when the show was airing, it's a very different story here. Hannah Montana had 2 albums, both released in the first 2 years of the show's 4-year run, and Liz and Maddie not only had 1 album released in the same time frame, even worse when you consider the fact that even though both shows were 4 seasons, Hannah Montana had 18 more episodes than Liz and Maddie, there was also more Hannah Montana to go off of, and there was more music to promote. Hannah Montana was also a fictionalized version of Miley's actual life story too, which kind of brings me to my next point. Miley's father is Billy Ray fucking Cyrus. She has a foot in the door of the music industry as is, and that was something that was heavily featured in the Hannah Montana series as a whole. No joke, Miley was basically groomed from bucking Firth, not in that way, sickos, to become a pop sensation. Dove Cameron, meanwhile, may have done some choir in her childhood and such, but doesn't have the connections that Miley Cyrus has before she can even release a solo album. This is a completely ridiculous standard to hold Dove Cameron to. That being said, I'm just gonna skip the rest of this entry. I don't really agree with every point that he makes here, but I at least get where he's coming from when he says it. Especially that shit about lounge music, because some of us actually like electro swing, thank you very much.
Number 8, and the When We Were Young Festival Award for not being able to let go of the past goes to New Kids on the Block featuring a pile of old goobers, Bring Back the Time.
Okay, hold up. Did not chart at all, according to your own fucking graphic. Why is this here in the first place? We're not even on what you actually say about the song. And I'm sorry, I normally wouldn't feel the need to call someone out like this because I get it with yearly hit songs list, because a song can become a hit in a year that it didn't release, or it could be a hit during multiple years, stuff like that. But, well, now I actually do have to go back into what you said at the beginning of the video.
I mean, the fact that I'm still listening to the radio is probably part of the problem, but basically, what happens now is a song gets popular on TikTok, which then makes it popular on Spotify, which gets it to chart on Billboard, and then radio finally goes, we gotta start playing this. A month later, your mom's singing along to a song in the car that your favorite TikTok tart used in a video, and now it's not cool anymore.
You admit that the metric for what makes something a hit song directly goes through Billboard. Just directly say that. Which, I mean, first of all, that chain of events isn't entirely accurate in and of itself, because there's plenty of hits that actually have nothing to do with TikTok. Bringing Up That Hill by Kate Bush charted this year, for example, because of its appearance in Stranger Things, and the Encanto soundtrack wasn't really a huge trend on TikTok to my knowledge, and Spotify isn't the only streaming service that Billboard pulls from. YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, they pull from damn near everywhere. Hell, they even pull from TikTok directly. But I don't even take issue with that, because that's just a simplified version of what's actually happening. What I take issue with is you pointing out that Billboard is an accurate metric. You put the Billboard positions of songs on screen while you talk about them, and you are putting a song on this list that has no Billboard presence. And no, he doesn't explain why this still counts as a hit in spite of that at all. Could have done as, like an honorable mention maybe. That's a good place to put songs that, you want to talk about, but are disqualified for one reason or another. Like, for instance, not actually being hits, but by artists who previously had hits. Because we all know that New Kids on the Block had a bunch of hits. Meanwhile, this Dose of Buckley video making me sick.
Okay, this was funny a few years ago, but it's just sad now. So back in 2018, these guys landed on my list for a song called 80s Baby, which was basically this exact same song, but with different guest stars.
Okay, see, the pass I give you for saying something like this in your Dove Cameron entry, I really can't give it to you here. For one, 80s Baby wasn't a hit either, but that's super minor at this point because I'm not covering your 2018 list. I'm covering this one. I also like how you imply this song is worse for doing this concept, but still put it in a lower position on the worst list, meaning that it's, I guess the other songs are even worse. You know what? That's not my point either. I have two major pillars for how this song is different from 80s Baby. Subject matter and composition. Let's start with the easy one, which is composition. Both are trying to sound old school, but they're doing it in different ways. As you can hear right now, 80s Baby operates more on an old school hip-hop vibe. The instrumental has similarities in particular to Hip Hop Hooray by Naughty by Nature and Hangin' Tough by New Kids themselves. Which fits, because the song was done for the 30th anniversary of the Hangin' Tough album. Compare this to Turn Back the Time, which went more in a synth-pop direction. Rick Astley is probably the only person on the actual song that actually went in this direction in the 80s. There's a number of artists referenced visually in the music video that you could actually hear in the song as well. Journey, Devo, Flock of Seagulls, stuff like that. They are two very different types of 80s song, and it's kind of like saying that Treasure by Bruno Mars is the same as Uptown Funk. They are clearly borrowing from entirely different genres to create their nostalgic pastiche. But, of course, that's not the reason Boyfriend was the same as Treat You Better in the previous entry, so the more important distinction here is subject matter. While both of them are using nostalgia as a significant factor in their imagery, 80s Baby isn't actually directly about nostalgia, but rather serves as a song about, well, a hookup when you really listen to the lyrical content. But it operates with a nostalgic blinder and references sprinkled in. Compare that to Bring Back the Time, which explicitly talks about taking the listener back to the past, rather than 80s Baby having the subject take the singer back in time. Same theme, absolutely, but the subject is entirely different. And this inclusion is awful for more reasons than this, but we're going to cross that bridge later.
Salt and or Peppa, you know that the Rickroll was used to mock the song because modern audiences knew no one would ever want to willingly... You know what? It doesn't matter.
Why should that matter to a song that's explicitly stating it's taking its listener back to 1989? You know, before Rickrolling was a thing? It's almost like they referred to Rickrolling as a concept and in a way that actually made it a brag about having money, which, You know, you could have actually used to make a much better joke. Oh, and there's actually a different reason that Rick Astley was used for a bait and switch meme. Look, I'm not going to speak on the motivations of the person who started it like you're trying to do, but I can speak on a reason relevant to the time period that it would make sense as a bait and switch. And that's because people were originally bait and switched by Rick Astley himself when they thought he was black. I'm not kidding. People for years actually got surprised at concerts when they saw a pasty white dude come on stage instead of a beefy black guy because of his voice. Even in 1987, he was a bait and switch, so using him as a means to pull a bait and switch hyperlink actually plays into this sort of meta-narrative and goes back to the 80s, and not in any way relates to people not liking his music, because fun fact, Never Gonna Give You Up is actually a banger, unironically. No, you shut up. But to be honest, here's the thing that really bothers me about this whole entry in general. So, some old guys make a new song that happens to be about nostalgia, and it gets here for clinging to the past. But, not a damn bit of the lazy-ass sampling from this year makes it when this didn't even chart. My guy, even fucking country music was lazily sampling old shit. Are you sure you want to get on to New Kids on the Block for actually picking up a pen when that's more than what Cole Swindell could manage? Like, Nicki Minaj just merged Super Freak with Anaconda.
I'm good, yeah, I'm feeling alright.
This exists! It's from this year! And original music that happens to be about the 80s is stuck in the past? Dude, piss on grapes, I swear to fuck!
Did you just tell him to piss on grapes?
Where the fuck did you come from?
Been here the whole time.
Huh.
Number 7, and the Lily Allen Award for Most Depressing Upbeat Song goes to M. Byhold, Numb Little Bug. Look everyone, it's Baby's first existential crisis. I don't know, normally I would at least find this kind of funny, the juxtaposition of the dark, sad lyrics with the poppy music, but sort of like this song's message of not really being able to explain exactly how they feel, there's just something I find irritating about this song, and I can't exactly pinpoint it. Her voice, or the production, or the fact that the instrumental is just like 5 notes on a keyboard and a drum machine.
See, if these were what you were actually going to talk about, I would probably be skipping over this whole section, honestly. Although I disagree with you on the simplicity of the instrumental, especially since it's kind of just the production point repeated, but simplicity actually works, puts more emphasis on the actual lyrics because this song has much more lyrical focus.
Not to mention the fact that the instrumental is just kind of, bass heavy? Simplistic, sure, but those keys essentially serve as the bass for the track considering how low they are. In fact, why not play the actual chorus here?
A little bit tired of trying to.
Oh yeah, that's right! Because the string hits underneath her lines actually proves your point wrong entirely.
Wow, it's almost like you don't know actual musical structure or something.
Boon, he's a music reviewer on the internet. Of course he doesn't.
Okay, we've both.
Shut your fucking mouth.
Or maybe just how obvious it is. Gen Z pretending they're Magellan as they find out on TikTok that you can roll up a t-shirt to save space in a drawer or whatever has really lost its charm. I've got another song on the list coming up where it's a 20-year-old making it seem like they've discovered something new, in this case, ennui. But yes, this is how everyone feels. It's called Being Alive.
So? Who gives a shit? Plenty of people make songs about emotions that are normal as a form of expression. It's not about being some new discovery that it exists, it's about expressing those feelings.
I think you're forgetting the part where the song is about drugs.
Actually,
Someone's gonna claim I'm missing the point, that this is a song about antidepressants numbing you, with the line at the start about how they don't feel a single thing, wondering if the pills have done too much, and then later on saying that they started taking them because they just wanted to see if it would make them happy. But this isn't new either. We overdiagnosed and overprescribed pills for ADHD 15 years ago. And now we're doing it for anxiety and depression. Instead of just telling people who are kind of sad sometimes, that's life and there's no pill to cure it. 90% of people get up every day and go to their job that, at best, they tolerate, at worst, they fucking hate, They spend 8 hours there, then they come home and spend time with the same people doing the same things, doing the what do you want for dinner, oh I don't know, what do you feel like dance, watching TV or playing video games or scrolling through social media feeds, just killing time before bedtime. And then you do it all over again the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And you do it because the alternative is too permanent and means you'll never know how your new favorite show ends.
But all that really does is make your complaint worse. I mean, you acknowledge that your initial complaint assumed the song to not be about overprescribing medication for depression, but simply about this normal cycle of human emotion, and yet you're judging her for using an artistic expression to cope with it, while also judging the less healthy alternative that the song is actually about.
Especially since the lyrics expressly indicate that the medication is involved because it was her idea and not her doctor's, thus putting the blame on her for her own numbness rather than just the medical system. Look, maybe you're kind of being overly judgmental of a song about something that everyone fucking writes about.
Number 6, and the Kid Rock Award for finding a new audience to pander to after the old one gets sick of you, goes to Elle King. Try Jesus.
Oh look, another song that didn't fucking chart!
Does this name sound familiar? In 2014, 8 years ago, Elle King had a massive hit with X's and O's, a song about how she made men out of boys by fucking them, listing off all the dudes she let slide inside and then said goodbye to, and how she was so irresistible, this girl, that they just kept coming back for more.
So, you're saying that this person making a song about being in demand as a sexual partner doesn't make sense because of her appearance? And based on the fact that you just pointed her and dismissed the idea, it must be obvious, and the obvious thing that comes to mind is that she's not conventionally attractive. Alright. That's gonna get real problematic later.
This new song is basically the anti-X's and O's. The format's identical, starts out by talking about guys she met in different cities and towns.
I met a guy outside Bozeman. He liked drinking and smoking. It was fun till he asked we could keep things open.
But in this one, it's bad that they're promiscuous and temporary.
So somebody can't have a different opinion about something 8 years later?
Not that these are actually the opposite, because you seem to have missed how she never says anything about being with multiple guys at once. You know, what keeping it open means. She even explicitly talks about leaving a guy in California for a guy in the UK.
Yeah, in the chorus, she even says they haunt her, and the song is literally called X's and O's. You know an ex is someone that you're no longer dating, right?
Besides, maybe she knows it as a red flag now because of past experiences.
So then she realizes the only load she needs to take is a load from the Lord.
Got me singing, hey, hallelujah, hey, freaking man. Baby, I don't need me anybody but him.
Imagine if Cardi B did a sequel song to WAP where she joined a convent and told everyone that fucking is bad and service to God Almighty is the only thing that she needs to make her squirt. That's this.
Yes, because as we all know, people never change.
Especially since the song paints religion as a new thing in her life, as indicated by the first line of the chorus. And, you know, the name.
That being said, I'm going to skip over the rest of this because, well, fuck, I'm not a big fan of the song either. It's generally kind of cringy, but my reasoning really has nothing to do with Elle's past songs. It just has to do with how dumb this song is on its own.
Number 5, and the Black Eyed Peas Award for making people think, wait, those guys still make music? Goes to the Chainsmokers. Hi. Oh, look, the Chainsmokers are back. Goody. After releasing music every year consistently since 2014, it seems that they took a break for 3 years. Why DJs who make songs for people to dance to might not have put out any music during a global pandemic when a lot of clubs were shut down, I don't know.
Okay, first of all, not even the most important thing here, but 2020 and 2021 are 2 years, not 3. Even being as generous as possible and going with the exact release dates of every single, the gap between P.S. I Hope You're Happy and Hi is 2 years and, like, a single month.
They also have a songwriting credit in 2021 on Used to Be by Steve Aoki and Kiara, featuring Wiz Khalifa, which points out another issue with your point. Other DJs and EDM producers were still making music during the time. Aoki's last album was in 2020, and the fact that most of his singles from the back half of 2020 actually works against you talking about less club music being made when clubs were shut down. People don't play the album in the club. They listen to the album at home. So the fact that the singles are his primary way of releasing music entirely during this time just shows that people still want varied house playlists from multiple artists, which means the Chainsmokers still have their audience even if the clubs are closed. Like, you do know that DJs don't just work clubs, right? And in fact, typically already separated from the general public in their booths, so maintaining social distance at an event that would call for a DJ is actually really easy. Not that, that's relevant to releasing original compositions, because you don't know what a DJ does.
Several other EDM producers were active during 2020 and 2021, but here's another reason the Chainsmokers hiatus is completely irrelevant to the pandemic. It was announced before anything was being shut down. Cancellations and shutdowns didn't happen until March, and the Chainsmokers announced they were taking a break in February. I suppose you could argue they had an idea of what was going to happen and chose to get ahead of it, but that's where everything else we said in this interjection proves you wrong. You would think that anyone else, would have chosen to stop releasing music during this time frame after the announcement of shutdowns, if that was the case. But that's not what happened at all. In fact, even the Chainsmokers had their soundtrack to Words on a Bathroom Wall come out in August of 2020. So the hiatus wasn't even as stringent as you said it was. And surely that logic you're using should apply to DJs making music for a movie soundtrack when most theaters were shut down as well. And if I can be quite frank about it, there's having an edgy sense of humor, and then there's this insensitive bullshit.
Oh, and you may want to tread carefully about judging an EDM track, because I'm a bit of an expert on the topic. Just saying.
But apparently, during the break, they spent a lot of time listening to the Arctic Monkeys. I mean, this is basically Why'd You Only Call Me When You're High, but from the perspective of the other person, and with a few 2010s era EDM wubs thrown in, because they still think that's cool for some reason.
I mean, sure, kind of, but don't you think that's a good subject matter to write from multiple perspectives about?
He's a music reviewer, remember? And apparently, if anyone has ever made a single song about the same subject as what you're making a song about, and it got popular, that's a crime against humanity, and it's basically the same song, even if it's telling a similar story from a different perspective.
Oh, right, I forgot. Todd the Shadows clones are basic bitches.
Play the same old songs. I know that you're different in your Air Force Ones.
Oh, and I guess maybe some Nelly popped on the pandemic playlist as well? Or maybe it's an attempt at some product placement, like the Chainsmokers need new shoes but can't afford them, so they thought, maybe if we mention a Nike product, they'll send us some?
Well, if someone dogging other songs for being about nostalgia, you sure did miss that the point of that line was an appeal to nostalgia.
And also, this is actually bringing up that nostalgia as a flaw. The main recurring line of the song that plays at the end of the stanza, where this is said, is, you always say shit's gonna change, but it never does. And bringing up playing the same songs over and over again is a sign of someone who is stuck in their ways and doesn't want to adapt to the world around them, which is actually a level of detail that differentiates them from the Arctic Monkeys song. See, Why'd You Only Call Me When You're High is about someone continually pursuing someone that left them, and for the most part steers away from saying that they were ever getting back together, with the ending interpreted as the narrator, who is the pursuer in this instance, getting bored, essentially, kind of displaying the answer to the question that the person they keep calling keeps asking. Meanwhile, in the Chainsmokers song, the implication is of someone who can't pull themselves away from a situation that they know is bad for them. They know this person is hurting them, but they are, in the song's own words, addicted to the positive emotions associated with being with them. So they keep going back. That's where the difference is. The Arctic Monkeys are talking about a situation that, as far as the song tells us, is really a one-way pursuit, while the Chainsmokers are talking about codependent behavior.
It's a song about being an enabler to an addict who can't change. I feel like there's some comparisons to be made to people still listening to the Chainsmokers, despite the fact that, even though they suck, they just can't help themselves.
Could have sworn you said this was a ripoff of Arctic Monkeys? Oh, so, when it benefits your joke, it's the same as something else. But when it benefits a different joke, it's got a different subject matter. Right. Consume penis.
Guys, remember when you used to pay someone to sing on most of your songs? You should consider doing that again. Because, seriously, you spent 3 years doing nothing. You couldn't take a couple singing lessons?
Okay, to be fair, they do sound like ass on this song. That being said, Yeah, one of your examples is their biggest hit where it was Halsey and Taggart. So you'd think that since it was bigger than the singles beforehand that did not have Taggart sing, that would communicate to them that having Taggart sing is what people want from the group, yeah?
Or they just wanted to Halsey do it.
I mean, sure, but still, the point is it explains the direction Chainsmokers went when the albums and EPs after Memories Do Not Open, which is the album Closer is on, by the way, had more feature singer credits but couldn't break into the top 50 on the Billboard 200. Granted, having no feature artists has proven less effective as well, and it could just be them, but we'll get into what I think of the real problem with what they produced is in a second.
Nah, just overproduce the vocals, mask it with an awful beat, good to go. I'd say that people could only love this song when they're high, but I don't believe for a second there's a drug that makes this tolerable.
Okay, so I don't actually think overproduction is the reason the vocals don't work on this album. It's a factor. The autotune sounds god-awful here for sure, but that's because autotune and falsetto don't mix. Like, Taggart's vocal register is low, arguably a baritone before even being a tenor, but because modern pop music apparently refuses to acknowledge the fact that singing low can be quality, people oftentimes wind up raising their register in songs like this. That's not what was done in Closer or any of the other older songs Chainsmokers made. They let Taggart sing lower. However, on this whole album, he kind of goes up into a high chest voice, and his high chest voice fucking sucks.
I'd argue it might even be a really, really shitty falsetto, like Louis Capaldi bad. And that's the thing, the production really has nothing to do with it, nor do I think it's even an attempt to save it, because like everybody used fucking reverb and processing. But it does sound bad, and the autotune does not make it sound better.
Speaking of not being able to sing, number 4 and the Julia Michaels Award for not giving this song to someone else to sing when you probably should have goes to Jax, Victoria's Secret.
I normally would be playing as little of the original song as possible, but it's going to be necessary to play more of the song in this entry for the purposes of critique, so apologies in advance if this video takes a while to come out because I'm at war with Atlantic over this one.
I'm sorry, but any amount of natural rasp to anyone's voice means that they just can't fucking sing now? This is another problem with assholes like you. Only one type of voice is allowed to sound good, but not every singer needs to be Mariah Carey or Usher. I'm sorry.
Yeah, real talk, that's the problem with these last two entries. I get what you're going for when you say her singing doesn't sound good, I really do. And I used to be far more superficial about what I thought of people singing myself, but... well, I'm sorry, by your standards, Amy Winehouse is a terrible singer too, and I'm just not having it.
Is singing the only profession you can be successful at when you're not actually good at it? Like, if you hired a plumber who couldn't fix a toilet, you wouldn't go, well, I got shit slopping on my floor, but god damn, he's got a great message.
Nothing like comparing a job with an outright objective measure of success or failure in terms of job completion to, you know, art.
Actually, just think about that for a second. You have a lot of followers on Patreon, right? A lot of people like what you do on your channel and want to support it. Cool. Great for you. I think you suck, though. It's the entertainment business, my man. The message is part of what can entertain people.
And being bad can inherently be a part of entertainment as well, which isn't part of being a fucking plumber.
Not even for Mario.
Please don't bring up Mario. I've had enough of the Stanford Prison Experiment.
What?
Yes, tons of legendary performers had questionable voices. Dylan, Joplin, Lemmy. But Jax here is no Lemmy, even if TikTok thinks this is what rock music is.
Oh, so you admit that her voice should have absolutely nothing to do with any of this. Which is, you know, why you named the segment for her voice.
Anyway, I'm probably gonna get shit for this one because it's got such a positive message. But like Numb Little Bug, this one also has this funny Gen Z, look what I discovered vibe. Yes, everyone knows Victoria's Secret is bullshit. Most women's fashion, most advertising for women's fashion, all the photoshopping. It's from dudes trying to make women look like what they want women to look like. People have been talking about this and airbrushing people since at least the 90s. We've heard about the unhealthy lifestyles of supermodels. There's a line at the start where she says, I wish someone would have told me when I was younger that all bodies aren't the same. Kate Winslet spoke out about this happening to her in 2003. You were 7 years old.
I mean, I think you're missing the...
We've known about this for a long time. No one does anything about it, of course, because despite knowing it, we all still want everyone to find us fuckable. But this isn't some big reveal.
Okay, correction. I know that you're missing the point. The chorus is contextualized in the song of wanting to go back and tell her younger self this thing that the entire adult world knows. But as you pointed out, no one gives a shit about. With the goal being that we should give a shit and not continue promoting an unhealthy body image. And how seeing nothing but skinny girls, that's the important thing, on magazine covers resulted in anorexia.
Is it really on a 7-year-old to do a ton of research and find out how fake the fashion industry really is? If anything, wouldn't that be on the parents or society as a whole to not promote a more diverse body image? It's not about the fact that society as a whole didn't know about it. The song states that it's about someone individually needing to learn far sooner than they did. And that's not necessarily the fault of the child in this instance.
And even if you could, she actually calls her younger self stupid in the song. So she'd probably agree with you. Not gonna lie, big Grimskull vibes on this one. Hey child, just stop being groomed by the fashion industry, forehead.
Maybe next, you can write a song about how pro wrestling's fixed and they decide who wins all the matches ahead of time? Did you know a guy in Connecticut decides whether or not Roman Reigns wins? Holy shit, no, really? Whatever.
You know, I'm not even offended that you made this analogy because it fits your wrong interpretation. It's just... I'm sorry, of all the fucking matches you could have used, it was Roman Reigns versus Logan Paul in Saudi Arabia. Fuck, at least use a Lesnar match. The most evil thing you could have possibly done is remind people of Logan Paul's babyface run when Lesnar lifted a ring with a tractor. It's hilarious.
I guess everyone learns things when they learn things.
So songs about things that are obvious should be fine then.
Why do you keep debunking your reasons for putting songs on a worse list before we can do it?
Also, gotta love the usual, I hate body shaming, but I'll also body shame line that's always in these songs. Tough titties, Sydney Sweeney. Once again, you're not a real person. Be fatter or you're not being body positive.
That's not the point. That has never been the point. The point is seeing more diverse body types on magazine covers, and even explicitly calls out Photoshop as part of the problem. Like, this, even less so than when other people try to do this, has nothing to do with what the models actually look like. And even if it does, it's because the ideas being presented are something that is hurting the models as well. Because fun fact, something we've known about for way longer than Photoshop is models hurting themselves in order to obtain the look they have, as confirmed in a Harvard study to still become in practice to the point where 81% of models report as medically underweight.
Sydney Sweeney is a real person, and as a real person, we as a society should want her to be in good health. If she's not underweight, cool. Then this song isn't about her.
And the rest of this segment doesn't matter, so, you know, just moving on. Fuck you.
Number 3 in the Cardi B award for most vulgar song goes to Cupcake, H2Ho.
Guess what got more trip than anything a bitch put on?
Oh, good. Another song that didn't chart. Fantastic. Why is this here?
Dale, it's way worse than that. Hey, remember when I said that you sucked and can still be a successful YouTuber? Yeah, I don't need to cover this section at all. I only picked the comments that most directly address this, but yeah, Cupcake was actually before Cardi B, if only by a year or two, and Cardi B wasn't making hyper raunchy rap when Cupcake started doing it. So the premise of this entire segment is just kind of broken from the outset. I shouldn't give this one the dignity. This has nothing to do with demonetization either, nor does it have to do with me having nothing to say, because I really have a lot to say. Which is why I'm actually going to address it.
Yeah, if you've got a drip, that's an issue you should see someone about. That's probably gonorrhea.
Look, good joke. I fucking love it, actually. It's the funniest thing that you've said in this entire video.
Oh, come on. I'm sure you, of all people, could nitpick this if I can see it.
What are you... Oh, fuck, we're doing articles again. God damn it. Yeah, she didn't say a drip. She said her pussy has drip, referring to the qualitative merit of being wet. You can spin that to make it about gonorrhea for the joke, sure, but that doesn't mean you're factually accurate.
Which, well, you've admitted in this video that a lot of your audience are people who don't know popular music. So misrepresenting what the lyrics are actually about for a joke is a little more out of line when you admit you're catering to an audience that's more likely to take what you're saying about those lyrics at face value.
Technically, that's final thoughts talk, but whatever. The actual problems with what you're saying, I'd have to reopen my Patreon for.
Poppin' and I'm poppin' this twat, fuck a two-head twist, I got the dick on lock.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say the word twat in a song. You know I always reward points for originality.
You know, which is why this song is on your worst list? Because it does something that's positive in your eyes? And this is going to bite you in the ass later.
Or, you know, now, we already pointed out how the whole premise is just Cardi B did it first, so having lyrics you call creative undermines the point entirely, even without the fact that Cupcake came first, metaphorically and literally, being factored in.
Also, please don't two-hand twist dudes' dicks, giving them the old schoolyard rug burn. No one wants that.
Oh my god, she says, fuck a two-hand twist. As in she doesn't want to do one. Dumbass.
Which is an actual sex move, by the way. It's a full-ass category on well, it's not the full-ass category, it's a different category. You get what I mean. Someone clearly wants that!
Throat full of little babies, wait, bruh. Shout out to Jada, wait up.
Throat full of little babies. That conjures a fucking image.
Oh wow, dude, you're totally not a prude but can't handle a line about guzzling cum. Get fucked! And I mean that literally. You're clearly not getting any.
You could have pointed out how she had to use wait bra as a way to force the rhyme, and not very well at that, as an actual criticism, but no. All about the sexual connotation of the lines instead of doing what a music critic should actually do and talk about how the song does what it intends and how the song does so poorly. You actually had something you could say negative about the song and you didn't.
The shout out to Jada Wada is a pun. That's rapper Lil Baby's baby mama. Does she got little babies in her throat?
You can recognize the fact that it's a pun on Lil Baby's baby mama, but you don't realize that Little Babies is part of the pun.
See, when they're as funny as the gonorrhea joke, at least I can give you credit. This was just cringier than, well, my entire existence.
But you know the worst part of this song? That flute, recorder, what is that? It's a really annoying element that takes away from any enjoyment I might get out of the song.
One person's annoyance is another person's symphony, my guy.
Allow the real musician to give some insight here.
You're a DJ!
Shut your face. So, the context is very important to whether something is or is not annoying, which is why this element wouldn't be out of place at all in a song recorded in the 16th century. It's more likely that everything else would be completely ridiculous. Well, except the sex talk. Mozart was making tons of songs about literal shit. Anyway, the thing about music is that it often includes elements at several different octaves because it creates more full sound. That's why the songs have bass for the low register and percussive elements to accentuate and control the way that the ear processes the bass. But that's what the high notes are doing, which is what I presume you mean by the recorder, because the lower version is probably an oboe, and there's no way you'd be confusing the mallet hits for a woodwind. So, those higher recorder sounding notes are typically come during the verse when she picks up her own vocal energy and cadence in order to heighten the energy further at those points, then cooling down after 8 bars for the second half of the verse while her cadence continues its speed to maintain that higher energy level to prepare for a come down to normalcy in the chorus. Then the recorder is also used at the ending to build to a final crescendo and release all the tension from the song at the ending. Orgasm joke. You could argue that it could be done with a different instrument, I'm sure, but that's your annoying element. There's moaning ad-libs all over the song, and you're annoyed by a woodwind. It also serves to help identify the song easier for the listener, and to me, it sounds pretty good. And to illustrate the point, I've actually been using a recorder synth for the background music playing right now just to show you how the instrument isn't annoying and you're really just looking for things to not like.
But overall, I think it's just gratuitous for the sake of being gratuitous. It's not particularly clever, and there's no message here. It's just trying to say as many vulgar things as I can in 3 minutes to make 16-year-olds laugh.
Nothing clever, even though you gave it points for creativity earlier.
And a little baby reference that you felt the need to explain. Mr. Crocker's hands in a sexual context. Anyway, there's like 2 sentences left of this segment, and it's pretty much the Cardi B comparison, so we're done here.
Number 2 is a 2-way tie, but they both get the Rick Ross Award for Fakest Rapper because they're both Drake, and 2 of his songs, Rich Flex and Privileged Rappers.
Normally, this is the point in the commentary where someone would be like, you can't do that! He's a top 11 now! My dad works at Sony! But honestly, given the way you structure these, I get it. Especially since this entry is about the artist more so than about the song. That being said, this is gonna be another one of those, points where I start defending a position I don't necessarily agree with. So bear with me.
I have a question for literally every other rapper on the planet. Why do you let Drake get away with this horse shit?
Asking Pusha T that too, huh?
Is it because he's so popular that every time he releases an album, every single song ends up in the top 20? Is that it? So you want to be nice to him so that he might feature you so that you can grab some of those sloppy seconds from his Spotify pennies?
Yes.
That is the exact reason.
Because otherwise, why do you let him pretend he's such a hard fucking gangsta when he's an actor from Canada who has a career as a rapper because Lil Wayne was high on cough syrup and said, yeah, you could be in Young Money.
That's a valid way to interpret it, although he did have to take specific measures to get Lil Wayne's attention, doing a remix of Man of the Year and retaining Lil Wayne's verse from the original for one, which got someone's attention who sent it to Lil Wayne. Like, if you want to make that argument, I can argue that Eminem had a career because Dr. Dre got high and said, damn, this white kid from Detroit really sounds black.
Like, I get it. A lot of rappers are full of shit. But they came up in rough neighborhoods and they can rap about what they saw happen to their friends or family or whatever. Drake grew up in a country that has an average of 145 gun homicides a year. A year! And he's talking about being on that slaughter gang shit and chrome on chrome. Get, and I can't stress this enough, the fuck out of here.
Well, in Drake's early music, he wasn't talking about slaughter gang shit or chrome on chrome. Most of his early music was about having money and getting women, which, well, makes sense for an actor. And Drake didn't grow up rich either. Lil Dicky is also a middle-class rapper. The Weeknd is from Canada and makes a lot of music about cocaine. Snow is Canadian and makes a song about stabbing an informant.
Yeah, something you may not understand about street violence, guns aren't necessarily the weapon you're using, even if it's the weapon you're carrying. And I really want to know where you're getting your homicide stats for Canada from. Because I have a much more accurate and recent source. It says in 2021, Canada reported 788 homicides, with 40% of those being firearms related, resulting in about 315 firearms deaths. And that doesn't take into consideration non-fatal injuries from guns. Of course, Canada also has much tighter gun control laws than the US, and also has about a tenth of the population of the US in about the same amount of area. So lower population density and more accountability might have a lot more to do with those lower numbers than a lack of violence in the first place. Especially when you consider that a lot of the increase in homicide from 2020 to 2021 comes from Ontario. And isn't it just so funny how an increase in homicide in his home makes Drake more comfortable over time making songs that involve guns?
Why do you know so much about
Superhero. Part of my job. Duh.
So then he has the balls to release a song called Privileged Rappers, and it's not about how easy he had it. In fact, he says this.
I hate a privileged rapper who don't even know what it takes.
The fuck are you talking about? You're a privileged rapper, Aubrey.
And isn't it funny that you play an incredibly contextless line and not the line repeated during the chorus that actually explains what he means by privileged rapper?
I hate a privileged rapper that ain't had a hit since he signed us, y'all.
That's weird. It's almost like he's talking about someone privileged in terms of not putting in the work to make their music appeal to a wider audience.
Which would happen to include
Too much respect. I used to hand out CDs before they would buy it.
giving away your music just so people will give you a fucking chance.
Which kind of goes into the rest of this entry.
But Buckley, he started from the bottom. Didn't you see that post from his first show? Yeah, this made the rounds on social media in October of this year. He got paid $100 as the opener for a show in Toronto. You know who he opened for? Fucking Ice Cube. Tell me who the fuck in their very first show gets to be the opening act for a fucking legend. How does that happen without connections, without privilege?
Well, when you've already gotten into the entertainment industry on the merits of your own work and had already been working for 6 fucking years to make a name for yourself before you even get that opportunity, yeah, I'd say that's not privilege, guy.
This is like saying Ice Cube is privileged because Dre thought his raps were good. That's not how any of this works. Forming connections is part of the work that goes into it.
Drake has so little self-awareness, he couldn't tell you where his own asshole is right now. Hey, maybe next year, Mr. Graham, you can write a song about how you hate Canadian rappers who had a friend whose dad was an acting agent, which led them to doing 100 episodes of TV, then had 2 uncles in the music industry and was able to, somehow, open for Ice Cube, and then, almost immediately after that, tour with the most popular rapper of the mid to late 2000s.
Alright, so aside from a lot of this just being having connections is bad, which is kind of just how the mainstream music industry works in general. So I don't know how you can sleep at night calling Drake fake for this reason. And there's really no evidence to suggest that Drake had any contact with his uncles prior to becoming famous. And even if it were true, real talk, when it comes to the path through the music industry he was taking, it makes 0 sense to think they had any involvement in it.
I'm not going to pretend that either myself or Boon like Drake or think his music is credible. There's plenty of reasons other than him being on Degrassi or being Canadian in general that make a lot more sense for that though. Including the fact that the beat switch on Rick's Flex is the worst case of whiplash I've heard in just about any song. And that's the thing, right? There's valid criticisms to be had and ones you can get a lot of entertainment out of. The problem here, though, is Buckley, like a lot of music reviewers on YouTube, doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Todd in the Shadows has more credibility in what he's talking about, and Todd actually admits he doesn't know what he's talking about half the time, which is honestly part of the reason he's more credible.
Pretty much hit the nail on the fucking head with that one. Legit, I already didn't like your shit very much, and I was like, maybe if I watch this list, he'll have improved. No, not in the least. If anything, he's just spiraling further down in quality because his viewer base is getting giggles out of this shit without the remotest amount of awareness that it's not even close to the type of content they should expect from him. It's not harmful, at least not for the most part, although I'd argue that saying social change is pointless is, but it's damn sure not good. There are times where someone may ask why I should care about what I'm covering or bother saying these things. This is why. Because if I don't at least try to promote quality content and call out what I think doesn't meet the mark, then what happens is that the bad gets worse and the good goes away. And that's more or less why Buckley would want to make his content as well. Or at least I'd hope so. So maybe he'd see this video and say, hey, maybe there's some things I could address. Because I've seen some big names actually do something to at least acknowledge what I've had to say about them in the past. Knowing his stubborn ass though, I doubt it. Although, maybe he should. Glancing from his own comment section, not going to show those here, I did notice that some of his fans seem aware of his decline, and yet they are so quick to blame the algorithm. Do any of you think maybe it's not the algorithm that's the cause here? Look, even content I don't like is something I feel should be on the channel. But do you think it's possible that others just plain got tired of what he had to say and you didn't? Which is perfectly fine. I pointed out earlier how YouTube is something that people can think you suck at, but you can still be successful doing. But just like I wouldn't want my audience going over to Buckley's channel to start talking trash, I also don't want any of you that have come over here just calling me a jealous hater or, you know, whatever else I'm sure you can come up with, simply because of the fact that I've made a video outlining where I saw flaws in Buckley's reasoning and stance. So my advice stands for my fans, for Buckley's fans, and for Buckley himself. And it's something I've said quite a bit in the past. Do not treat what anyone has to say, including yourself and myself, in Buckley's case, as the only opinion that matters. My fans shouldn't treat my word as the word of God. Buckley's fans shouldn't treat his word as the word of God. Neither myself nor Buckley should treat our own word as the word of God, except what our own opinion is. We're not sheep and we're not blind. Look at the world around you when making your own decisions.
Okay, so I was wondering, how did you get here again?